Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ideanthro. Now today, we're continuing our look at the different types of bioretention systems so that when we come to talk maintenance and design, we've got a little bit of a framework to work from. So what I wanted to share with you today is some examples of streetscape bioretention systems. Now we're going to look at 4 different systems in this video, and they're not all here, so there's going to be some magical cutting between locations going on. But we're going to look at 4 systems. And when I mean streetscape systems, what I'm really referring to is any sort of bioretention system that is near to where cars go. So obviously they can be on the footpath next to a road, they could be in a curb build out, but they could also be in somewhere like this, which is a car park. And we've got this system here as our first example. So this is a little streetscape bioretention system, and a few things I want to show you about it that I suppose make it or that are common to streetscape systems. Firstly, the way the water gets into this system here. So streetscape systems tend to be smaller and they are closer to the source of the stormwater. And what that means is that we try and collect the water directly off the road's surface so that it just runs overland into the system. So you can see how it comes down the gutter here and then flows in by this point in this little cutout, like so. So that's really common for streetscape systems. They're at surface and there's a benefit to that, right? So if you think about this, we're in a car park and space is at a premium. We obviously don't want to take up too much space with this bioretention system because that'll cut into the space for the car parks themselves. To help with that, we try and keep the system shallow. And taking the stormwater from the surface of the road straight into the system helps with that. So imagine this. Imagine that instead of taking the stormwater from the surface, that we collected it into a pipe. So it went down into the pipe, and the pipe's got to be a certain distance below the surface of the road, right? Let's say maybe half a metre to get appropriate cover over the top of the pipe. And so that pipe then flows out into the bioretention system. Well, that means the surface of the bioretention system has to be at least half a metre below the surface of the road. So suddenly the system's got really quite deep. That means we need either steeper batters, taller batters, wider batters to get from the surface of the system back up to the surrounding area. That takes more space. It also doesn't look as good because people are walking around here, right? We don't want a really deep system. It just doesn't fit in with how the area looks. So by taking the stormwater at source in a streetscape system, we can keep the systems shallower, we can keep them smaller, we can keep them looking better, we can make sure no one thinks they need to put a fence around this thing, and it just makes for a better outcome. So this is our first example of a streetscape system. It's a little kind of biopod system in a car park. Next up, I'm going to show you what we can do with a bioretention swale that both treats and conveys water beside a road, beside a parkland. So let's go take a look at that. Here we are at the second of our streetscape bioretention systems, and this one is a little bioretention swale. So you can see it running all the way back up along this street here. It's this little system here filled up with the lamandras, and it drains the water off the road behind me here. You can see the flush curbing, so the water can come off the road onto the over the flush curbing and into the bioretention swale. So this is another sort of bioretention system that works really well when you have a road next to a parkland or a riparian area or this sort of thing, mainly where there's no houses. Because if there are houses, there are driveways. And then you have this long swale and you have driveway crossovers and things get challenging. Not impossible, but challenging. But in this instance, where it's beside a park or a riparian area, there's no driveway crossovers, you can get a long, uninterrupted length of swale. It adds to the green space of the park and it can integrate really beautifully. And this is a relatively nice example of it. Okay, on to our third type of streetscape system. Okay, welcome to our third streetscape system. So as you can see this time, we've got a little centre median system here. It's actually quite old. It's one of the oldest bioretention systems in Queensland. The oldest system in Queensland, which is the second oldest in Australia, is the Highland Street system on the north of Brisbane, and it was built in 2001. This system here, I've seen photos of it when it was really, really new. It was also built in 2001, so it's got to be one of the oldest in Queensland. But I wanted to show you this system because it's kind of cool. It's nice and simple. It's lasted the test of time. Let's see, it's streetscape again, but it's draining towards the centre median of this system and creating a really nice nice looking system. We don't see as many of these centre median type systems done anymore because they require a wider road reserve, but they are still a really good option when you've got the chance to do it. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a couple of things that are a bit challenging about this particular system, one of which is the use of these massive melaleucas in the middle of the street, which I'm sure somewhere up here is probably breaking up the pavement a bit as they've grown up a little bit. And the other challenging thing with this particular system is you can see back about here where the rocks in the system have now actually over time built up such that they are higher than the road. So it's not as ideal for getting water into this system as it used to be. There are definitely still some low points where the water can get in off the road, but you can also see by the line of kind of debris coming down the road here that a fair bit of water is now bypassing this system. But there's a reason for that. I mentioned that I'd seen photos of this system when it was really, really young, and it was actually constructed before all these houses around here were built. And I've got photos of this system before all these houses were here back in 2001. And as I say, it was built before the houses, and if we know anything about house building sites is that we know erosion and sediment control practices are absolutely atrocious. So there would have been heaps of sediment enter this system, and it would have filled up a lot when it was very new. Then combine that with these massive trees and leaf deposition and this stuff over time, and the system is now filled up to the point where it's quite hard for water to get into it. But it doesn't take away from the fact that the design, the aesthetics of this system, it's definitely got potential, and in terms of plant health, it's lasted the test of time. So look, that was our third streetscape system. We've got one more for you, and we'll go and take a look at that now. Okay, welcome to our fourth and final streetscape system. Now this type of system is probably the most common type that we see, and I wanted to show it to you, well, for that reason, but also for a particular design feature that it's got going on. Now look, before we get into it, I want to say one thing here, which is that I'm not entirely a fan of some of the aesthetic elements of this system. The way large amounts of concrete and a bit of a drop and then the full fencing being put on it, I'm not a massive fan of that, but this system is very conveniently located quite close to home for me. So it was easy for me to get out and film this episode, and it does demonstrate the features of the inlet and the outlet that I wanted to show you. So look, yes, most common streetscape system that we see. So we see there's an inlet up the top of the system up here. I'll wander up and I'll show that to you. So there's an inlet just up here in this system, so water coming down the road can get into this system and fill it up. The outlet pit is quite niftily located right here. So it's a standard gully pit that would be there anyway, because it's a sag, because there's a little bit of water that will come around from out of shot behind you, come around the corner there, and there's another inlet right next to the camera. But we're making use of this outlet pit here, so small rainfall events, water enters through the inlet there, can fill up the system. But if it's a big event, and either the system can fill up and water can back out of it through these two inlets, or if you've got lots of water, it'll just bypass straight down the curb and into here. And this is probably the most common setup of streetscape system that we'll see, because if you do your urban design really well, if you lay your blocks out correctly, you can fit these systems in such a way that they work really well in the urban environment. Now, as I say, there's a few challenges with this system, and I'm not going to go into today quite why that might be, but the general type is really common, and if you're responsible for maintaining bioretention systems or that sort of thing, there's a good chance that you're going to come across this type of system. So look, that's it for this video, where we've looked at streetscape bioretention systems, and we've looked at four particular types. We looked at a streetscape system in a car park, a little biopod, so to speak. We then looked at a bioretention swale between a long road and a parkland next to it. So that was a system that was conveying water as well as treating it. We then went and looked at a centre median bioretention system that had lots of large melaleuca trees in it. They're a little bit less common these days, but still good potential in those. And finally, we came down and looked at this system, which is probably the most common type of streetscape system, despite its couple of little flaws. And this is probably what you're going to see in most instances, or something like this. So look, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. If you want to find out more about Ideanthro, what it is we do, more episodes, our projects, that sort of thing, you can find us at ideanthro.com. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Ideanthro, and you can find us on YouTube where we post all our videos. Cool, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.